Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I am Bret Boone. Today I'm joined by a friend of the podcast. We had him on a couple years ago. Huge part of my childhood, longtime teammates with my pops. And we're going to get to reminiscing today about that. Recently had a big documentary came out on MLB Network. And let's get to it. Welcome Hall of Famer Mike Schmidt. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Brett, pleasure. No problem doing your podcast. You're a great friend. Your family's a great friend. Your mom, your dad, big part of my career. Ate a lot of pregame meals before you were born at their house, and they kind of, your daddy and mommy took me under their wing, and your dad's what? He might be, maybe a year or 2 years older than me. But back in the early days when he was in the minor leagues, we came up together in the minor leagues, and he switched to catcher to allow me to play third base. So I'd say he was pretty important to me.
And still to this day, he loves talking about that. He goes, Schmidt wouldn't even have made it if I wouldn't have agreed to move to catcher. That's his running, that's his one-liner, and it's still funny to this day. I tell that story all the time because people think people know, they know Mike Schmidt, the great third baseman, Bob Boone, the catcher for those big Philly teams, world champion in 1980. And they just assumed Dad was a catcher's hooker. I said, you have no idea. I said, Dad, Schmidt and Dad were coming up at a similar time, and one of them had to go catch. And I said, it was pretty obvious that it was going to be Dad. It ended up, if Dad stays at third, he might get a cup of coffee in the big leagues. Instead, he plays 19 years. And people don't know that about him. It's even weirder. My grandpa came up as a catcher, and then he ended up being a third baseman in Detroit and Cleveland. So they had kind of a twist of fate. But I wasn't allowed to catch, Mike. Growing up, my dad said, no, that's the last thing you do is catch. You play short until they tell you can't play short anymore, and then you go play second, and that was my last stop.
That's what happened to me. You play short until you can't play short anymore, and they sent me over to third base, and they asked, well, I don't know whether your daddy wanted to be a catcher or not, but somehow being a catcher got put into his career. I mean, I don't know whether he suggested it or somebody else suggested it, but yeah, you're right. If it's another one of those breaks in my life, in my career, getting to know your dad and having your dad sacrifice something for my career. So yeah, he's big in my life, not just in baseball, but as a friend.
You had the documentary come out, and I want to ask you first. You've had a lot of accolades in your lifetime, but when there's a documentary that comes out and you're watching it and you see the final product, I got to watch it. I taped it as soon as I heard it was coming out and sat down and watched it. Throughout the documentary, you reminisce and you read quotes of a younger Mike Schmidt, and there's kind of that kind of wry smile, like we all do. We all go back. I go back, and when I was 22 and coming up, I thought I knew it all, and then I was 30, and I laughed at that 22-year-old, and now I laugh at that guy that I thought was a veteran at 55. I look back to that guy that was 38 myself and laugh at him. We all do. But did you feel like? Does it seem like it was you, or was it like a fictional character you were watching?
That's that's a good way to describe it, Brett. And the whole thing is everything at the current age. When you look back at it, you have a totally different perspective than when you were living it. No one gave me any instructions as to how to handle playing in Philadelphia. I mean, people said, well, their fans are tough, but no one gave me instructions about how to play in front of them, how to handle what you're going to end up having to handle. I wasn't really ready for it. I wasn't mature enough. I was too sensitive to that whole thing. And I would like to think, looking back at it now, if I had it to do over again, I would have a much different perspective on what was going on. I mean, I really took it personally, and you may remember what I went through when I behind the scenes the pressure I felt trying to perform on the field in front of them. I don't want to say sort of eliminate the possibility of being booed, but it's just they can be very harsh at times. And when you saw the documentary, I think they portrayed the fans maybe a little too harshly. I'm not sure because they showed a lot of clips of the fans being very brutal to us as players, and they also showed showed parts of me that were very brutal toward the fans, and just I was reading those quotes on that iPad, and that was one sit down part of the interview, and they handed me an iPad, and it had like 8 quotes from me throughout my career, and I'm going, you got to be kidding! I said that. You got to be kidding! I said that. And they were trying to get a reaction out of me, and 1 or 2 of them I was going, God, I can't believe I said that. And then I could see where fans started to get to the sense of how they felt about me. And there's a lot of things about that, and the quotes, the honesty in front of the media surely didn't help. And then in Philadelphia they want the real down and dirty kind of player. They appreciate the guy that runs into walls, and they had a love affair with Larry Bowen, Greg Luzinski, and Pete Rose, of course, and they appeared to be like real down and dirty working class baseball players, and I appeared more to be, I would say, like a Joe DiMaggio style player, someone that the game came easy for. I almost looked like I didn't care on the field. That documentary depicted a lot of me diving and sliding and really getting dirty, and I thought that was great that they showed me like that. But there's no question, looking back, to answer your question, is it almost like I was saying, is that me? And yeah, I look at it in a totally different light now than when I was in the middle of it. But I can remember being in the middle of it. I mean, I own it now. That's one thing about the documentary, what it teaches you to do. It teaches you to own the reality. I don't have any. I wish it was different, but I don't have a problem owning it right now after having watched, because I get to own all the good stuff too. I get to own, all the successes. I get to own both sides of it, and so in totality, I was very pleased with it. Getting a lot of really positive comments.
Well, I can completely understand because I can put myself back, and you were probably in your late 20s at the time when it was really coming to a head. You were in your heyday. You're winning MVP awards, and you're coming to the yard, and if you don't get any hits that day, you're getting booed out of the stadium. And it's like, wait a minute. I'm winning home run titles. I'm winning MVPs. Why are you booing me, but you're not booing my teammates? They haven't won MVPs. They haven't. I completely get the mindset at that stage of your life. I think anybody would understand that. You go to Reggie Jackson always said they don't boo nobodies. And you go to a visiting ballpark and you get booed. That's kind of an endearment. Like, all right, you're the man, and we're booing you because you're that good. And it's kind of a stick your chest out. Yeah, you booing me because I'm going to kick your ass. But at home in Philly, it's very unique to get booed at home when the accolades are piling up like you did in your career. I could imagine being that kid, being that young man, thinking, why the hell you're sitting at home, and I'm sure you're talking to Donna going, why the hell are they booing me? I got 46 homers. I'm doing this. We're in first place. I could imagine those conversations. There's only a few of you, I think, that have really gone through the ringer in Philly greats. I think like a Barkley who was
Yes,
a part of your documentary. He can
I
he can
just
kind of he can feel that.
I sent him a text about a half hour ago thanking him for being a part of it, and I said because I'm Charles. I said to Charles, because what I went through, you did
Yeah.
too.
hmm
So yeah,
I
that's definitely one.
I think maybe an Eric Lindros might know a little bit. Julius Irving might know.
I wouldn't go there.
You think Julius was more of the the golden child? They loved him.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think he entertained those people. He did things that were
Yeah,
unimaginable on a court. I mean, you saw it, I saw it. I think he was, gentleman Julius. I mean, you know how he is, his personality and all that. I think they revered that man. I
yeah.
can't ever, and I watched him. I can't ever remember a negative sound in the state, and in the spectrum when he was there.
We were talking off camera how cool it was when stuff like this comes out, and I'll share this with the podcast. Whenever anything from my childhood comes out, and it has to do with your documentary or anything 70s, 80s Phillies, we have a text chain, and I'll get texts from Aaron Boone and Pete Rose Jr. and maybe a Mark McGraw and all my buddies that grew up in New Jersey about that time.
Right.
And it brings me back because it's like, what am I doing talking to my seventh grade buddy that we played football together just because a Mike Schmidt documentary is coming up? But it's cool. And now everybody's sitting down and they're watching it, and then they'll send a text. I mean, these people I haven't heard from in 20 years. And all of a sudden it's a big Philly moment because that was such a big time. And as you know, the people from Philadelphia and that part of the country, the Jersey side, man, and they're especially my age, that's all they talk about is that 80s Phillies. What was it like being on the float? Because I was on the float with you
Right.
guys
Right.
at the parade, thinking it was just a normal thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's pretty awesome when you get that. Then you're getting feedback, and it feels like you're in seventh grade. I feel like I'm in seventh grade again, and I'm getting ready to go to the ballpark and hound you guys.
It is fun to reminisce like that. My daughter Jessica got a big kick out of her. She was a baby, and Donna was holding Jessica, and Jonathan wasn't born yet. But so she then exchanged texts and sent out posts and things about, hey, did you see me on my dad's podcast? I'm just little baby Jessica, but that opened up a whole bunch of communication with her. And yeah, it's amazing the tentacles, that when something like this happens, that there are, that are present. Like, I mean, imagine all the people that were seen in that podcast. It doesn't necessarily have to be about me. I was the reason that it was out there, but think of all the people that were in it.
Yeah.
How it took us all back, to that time, that era, and for me and for a lot of those people, man, it's going to be something like my last hurrah.
It,
It'll be there. It'll always be there. I'll be dead and gone, and hopefully it'll be a while, but I'll be dead and gone, and it's still there for people to watch.
Yeah, it's something. It's your legacy. It's your great grandkids will get to watch that and go,
Right.
"Hey, that's my great grandpa." So there's something to that. Not too many people when they're dead and gone have something like that
That's right.
to kind of live on.
A quick little story. My granddaughter, she's 15, and she's such a kind, soft, beautiful little girl. And she and her sister, who's 2 years younger than her, were sitting on the couch with Jessica, watching the podcast, and they had never seen. They didn't even know my middle name was Jack, right? Oh, I didn't know that. Papa's middle name was Jack. And they started crying. They said I want to just give Papa a hug. They felt so bad about all that they were showing that I went through. They had no idea I went through all that stuff. They really hadn't really ever seen much film highlights, clips of me as a player. They knew I played baseball, and they knew I was a famous baseball player, but they had, to get them to see those clips was very special.
It's awesome because I was sitting there, I was watching it, and I've got my youngest, my twin boys. They're home from college, so
Oh, how
they're
are they?
my twin boys are 20. My youngest, Savannah's off. She's married. That's my daughter, and my oldest son Jacob. He's still playing in the minor leagues right now. He's back doing a job in Manhattan in New York. He's actually living with Uncle Aaron right now.
No kidding.
But my youngest boys are home, for Christmas, and I'm watching the documentary, and they're coming over. They're like, "What are you watching?" I said, "I'm watching a documentary about Schmitty." They're like, "Schmitty? Who's Schmitty?" I said, "Schmitty's." I mean, these guys are 20. They got no clue about anything. They're worried about the next frat party they're going to. I said, well, Mike played third base, and he played with Grandpa, and this is during my childhood, and I even told him the story. I said that guy used to change my diapers, and he goes, "Come on." I said, "Yeah." So they asked me a few questions, and they moved on with their life. But it's just like you said, your granddaughter knows that you did something pretty special, but she's not quite sure, and it's not something she probably talks about with her friends.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
Who reached out to you right away that you haven't heard from in a long time when this came out?
Let's see. A lot of people. Do you know Mike Tolan?
Yes.
Yeah, I've had a lot of wonderful. He and I are really good friends, um, and we talked for an hour about those old days, and Dick Allen was part of the subject, and so he grew up in Philly, I think Havertown or something, and he's very close with Middleton, um, and I mean he and I can just talk forever because he knows the town, the people. He knows me real well. Mike did the Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and he's a movie producer, and what did he just? I mean, he's done several big things, but and I only say him because he's a great fun to talk to. As far as reaching out, Julius did. Julius reached out. Now a lot of this reaching out was based upon me reaching out to thank them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they came back to me with a text. But personal friends of the family, our friends now, people from Philly. I Jake Tapper, he's a good friend of mine, CNN. I know that's the other side of the other side of the world politically for you guys because I know your dad.
You do know, yeah. Pops, he's pretty hardcore.
That's right. But yeah, Brett, not really famous people have come back to me about it. No, not really. Just, I mean, all good people, good friends, a lot of people. I'm telling you, a lot of people.
Did did they get it right? And was there something that didn't make it into the final cut that you wish they would have got in?
Good question. Well, there's one thing that I wished hadn't been in it that that made the final cut, and that quote in Philadelphia Magazine before I went to the Hall of Fame. That one about why do I owe Philadelphia anything? They never did anything for me. I let it fly one time in a Philadelphia Magazine piece, which I should never have done. Let me think. No, Brett, I tell you, after getting a chance to digest the thing and think about it and listen to other people's opinions about it, I use the term "own it" early. I'm comfortable with it. That was the times, that's how it was back then. That's how I was. I wish it would have been a little bit more of a George Brett kind of a career, where they just loved him everywhere he went.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was the man of the people, so to speak. And you wouldn't say that about me when I played. I was basically the opposite of the man of the people. Citizen Mike. I was not. Citizen George. He was. I mean, he's still that way. But I have made the total transition to Citizen Mike, if that makes sense to you.
No, it absolutely does, and I know exactly what you're talking about when you say, George couldn't get negative press. There's guys in my generation, Derek Jeter. Taking nothing away from Derek Jeter, he's a great guy. He was a great ambassador for the great player, Hall of Famer. But he could do no wrong. I played with Barry Larkin in Cincinnati. Barry walked on water. as far as the press was concerned. There are certain guys that are just whatever it is about them that they are just born that way, and that's the way it is. And
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
it's something that the rest of us look to and go, how come I don't have that? But it's something innate that you're born with.
Well, it's the way you carry yourself. Um, and if you have a certain walk or a certain way you react to certain things, if the expectations are at a certain level for you, and in baseball, you can't meet expectations, but maybe once or twice a week, right?
Right.
That's the kind of game it is. In football, you play one game every Sunday, and yeah, you ought to be able to meet expectations once a week, right? On Sunday afternoon.
That's right.
But I go 0 for 4, 0 for 5 a couple days a week, and those are going to be rough days, especially if in those games the game could be on the line, right? And it could be a big at bat, an error or something, and in Philly they're concerned about today, not yesterday, not what you might do, what your stats are on the scoreboard. They're watching you now, and they want to see you put your teeth in. They want to see you dive into bases, take out people at second base, and they want to see you dirty. They want to see you hurting. They want to see you slam your helmet, break your bat. They want to see all those kind of things. And I'm not saying Barry Larkin did that or George Brett did that.
Right. This is no negative connotations to these guys.
Yeah,
This
but
is just
that's the type of player personality they like in Philadelphia, right? And maybe in San Diego, they wouldn't even notice the way I walked or whether I came through in a certain clutch situation or whether I made a negative comment. They have one writer in San Diego, who knows, and he may be for the players as opposed to 6 writers in Philadelphia, and they all seemed like they were against the players, right? And yeah, so it's just the world I played in, the city I played in, and we have made amends, and I love that city now. And the Phillies have given me opportunity to stay involved for it's been like 15 years now, maybe even I got back with the Phillies in 2000. Larry Bowa was the manager in spring training, so I've been back with them. I've been with the Phillies for almost 55 years. Can you believe that?
Yeah, in one organization, which makes it too so unique about the. And you talk about, and I'll get off the subject after that, but you talk about the George Brett, and I think it's a great. Let's just keep it simple. If you and George flipped, you were a born and raised Kansas City Royal, and he was a Philly. It might have been a completely different script.
Yeah, did you hear what George said in the documentary about playing in Philly?
He said he's glad he never played there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there were many times when I was playing that I thought it might have been easier for me playing somewhere else. Whether they were pretty much, I don't know, where they weren't as hardcore as they are in Philadelphia, hard hat, if you will, whether they came from the beach, from surfing all day to watch a couple innings of the Dodgers game and have a couple of beers, and they didn't know the stats, they didn't, you know what I mean, they weren't, and by the way, the Phillies fans are smart, they're intelligent, and they know the game, they know when you don't move a run, right?
Which happens all the time in 2024, by the way.
I mean, and they have opinions about everything, and by the way, might I bring up just that whole Trey Turner thing? Did you see that?
No.
When they made a documentary about it. I think it's been on it's on Netflix.
Oh, you mean the Trey Turner when they gave him the standing O?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a new trend now.
I know.
Where was it? Where was it when you were playing?
I was at the game. Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah. Where's the Schmidt standing up? And by the way, I won the MVP last year. You're
That's
booing
right.
me out of the stadium. Sorry, I went 0 for 7 the last 2 games. It happened.
Exactly. Exactly. But I was there. I watched it. Pre-game, I went in and I was chatting with Dave Buck in the office, and he was telling me about this the sports announcer in the city that had suggested to the fans on talk radio that it might be something to try, right? Because
Right.
Trey, he was scuffling big time
Right.
on the road, a West Coast trip or something. He was really scuffling. He was like 0 for 20 or something. And Trey signed a big contract, long
Right.
term, that kind of stuff with the Phillies. And, it was one of those things where you got to be afraid to go to home plate that first at bat when you return back to the city from the road because you're scuffling so much. He went to the plate, and where was I? I don't know, it couldn't have been a Sunday, but I was there for something. And everybody's wondering what's going to happen. What's going to happen? They gave him a standing ovation when he walked up to the plate. Standing ovation. You'd have thought he had a walk-off grand slam or something. Standing ovation. He backed out. He took his helmet off. Spun around, tipped his helmet to the crowd. Got back in the batter's box and went 10 for 20 or some crazy thing like that, right? From that point on, now they're doing it for everybody.
They're doing it. And the thing is, that kind of adds a little more pressure. Like, okay, I stink right now. I'm getting booed. They're going to give me a standing O tomorrow. I better get hot. Because if I don't get hot, that standing O is going to be a one-time thing.
Yeah, Brett, I don't know. There's always pressure one way or the other, but it had to kind of like, man, calm me down, just kind of like let the air out of the balloon, and sure enough, he got hot.
It gave me a chance by watching that documentary. I got to kind of go through that 80s playoff with the Astros and the World Series one more time. I mean, it seems, well, those are classics. So you see them once in
Right.
a while. I always sit down and watch because it seems like I was sitting in my bedroom in New Jersey going through it for the umpteenth time. But I also learned a few things. I had no idea about the early not I don't want to call them troubles, but the early relationship you had with Danny Ozark. I remember Danny Ozark. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. That was mentioned in the documentary. Had no idea that Dick Allen was kind of a mentor to you at an early age. And by the way, I want to talk about Dick Allen a little bit. Recently, getting into the Hall of Fame, I've heard the stories. I'm not really old enough to have really remembered watching Dick Allen play. I think he was
Right.
more, I was more 5 or 6 then. Whereas when I was in Philly in 80, I was 12. I remember those vividly. Um, but it taught me and it taught me a few things that I didn't know about, like the Danny Ozark thing, for example, giving you a hard time. I'm laughing because he's sitting there going, okay, you can't have the flat bat. Well, I hit like this, and that's a part of when we get to the big leagues. It's like, what are you going to do? Because you have these expectations when you're coming through the minor leagues and you have this success, which gets you to the big leagues. You get to the big leagues and they tell you got to do it different. Wait a minute. This is how I got here. So now I'm going to change. It's still baseball.
Yes, that was in the documentary, and I'll never forget. He and I had a really rocky relationship. In '73, I wasn't very good, Brett. Very inconsistent. I mean, I struck out like a third of the time I got to home plate, and I think I only had like 350 at bats that year because he would platoon me, Ozark would, and there was a guy on our team called his name was Cesar Tovar. And so he kind of played every position in the infield. And when he played, he was a leadoff hitter. And he went to Cesar Tovar a lot and didn't play me. So, yeah, it was. I mean, I hit 18 home runs that year, and I think I had 55 ribbies or something. And I was second on the team in both categories. But Greg was there then, and he was their kind of upcoming star at the time, and I was I mean, I don't know. I just wasn't ready. Probably should have spent another year in the minor leagues. But Ozark and I, oh, geez, he was always called me the dumb Dutchman. And that didn't sit too well with me. But who am I? I'm just a first year in the major leagues, and so when I went to spring training the next year, I was kind of like fighting to stay in the big leagues. This is the spring training of '74.
Right.
And he'd walk around the batting cage, and he'd stand and he'd make comments. And then that one day you saw in the documentary, he was standing behind the batting cage, and I was, whatever I do, I was doing it. And he said they caught him talking to Ray Ripplemeyer, I think, who said, if he doesn't lay that bat back down, I'll get his ass out of here, or something like that. That's what he said to Ray Ripplemeyer, and they caught it on camera or whatever. And I said, you do whatever you want. I'm not doing this with my bat.
Right.
He wanted me to flatten out my bat. He thought maybe that was the reason I was so bad. But so went to winter ball, and came out in '74, hit a home run off the Tug McGraw opening day, a walk off, and then the whole year in 1974 was probably my best year ever.
Did the relationship change with the? I think of it when I was a kid and I was coming up. The guy that was hardest on me was Lou Piniella, and I mean, we got to a point where we were going to blows in his office. I said, Lou, just leave me alone. And he left me alone. And to this day, he's one of my favorite men in the game. We have an unbelievable relationship. Second time I went back to Seattle, it was different. I was a veteran player at that time, but loved him. But man, was he tough on me when I was coming up. It's like, Boone, I want you to hit home runs to the pull side. Then after the game, he didn't get the runner over. I told him to move the runner, and I'm going, what do you want? I'm 22 years old. I'm going, what do you want? And man, we had a tough relationship. Mine ended up being went from real tough relationship to one of my favorite men that I've ever met in the game. But did it change with you once you started having a lot of success in Philly with Ozark?
No, he managed all the way up till '79. So
Right.
he managed 73 to '79. So that's like 7 years, I guess. And he was let go in '79 for Dallas Green.
Right.
And I had I had a ton of success through the '70s. So individually, team-wise, of course, we won the division a couple of times, 3 times actually, and we lost in the first round of the playoffs 3 times. So Danny, I guess the only heat he took through all that was not replacing Bull in that one game where he should have, where that fly ball was catchable.
Left field. Yeah, left field.
And he normally put Jerry Martin out there in that situation. Now, who knows whether he would have caught it or not. But, that was our one real chance to get to the World Series. But, Danny's record through that whole time was probably pretty darn good. I mean, we won 100 games one time and 97 games another time. And So yeah, it's formidable manager through that time. Of course, then Dallas Green comes along with a totally different approach to management. And Danny was more of just let him play, and Dallas was more of a, like Lou Piniella was with you. He was much more of a guy like that. And Dallas got a lot of credit for us winning the World Series, and most of the credit probably should have gone to Pete Rose. But Danny has passed away a while back, and he and his wife, I could say a similar thing to like me and Danny to you and Piniella, for sure. After we both were out of the game and we'd bump into each other somewhere, we'd have some really, really nice chats about the old days, like you and Lou do,
Yeah. And you could say to him, Danny, what do you think? You think I should have laid that bat flat? Danny, let's just go back. Let's redo this whole thing. I'm going to hit with a flat bat, and let's see if it turns out the same. I'm sure he's
Bret. I actually from 1985, 86, 87, 88. Well, 86 and 87, when I thought I was probably the best hitter of my entire career, I did not take any pumps. Before I just touched the plate and put my bat here, and I think I thought I was putting it more flat. You
Right.
with
Yeah.
because I wanted to drive down on the ball,
Right.
more as a hitter, and it's hard to do that if you're like this, if your elbows coming up like that, it's really hard to get it back down in a downward plane. So I tried to lay it a little flatter so I could go directly to the ball, which major league hitters nowadays don't do.
No.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing though how, because I had a flat bat when I was early, and then I kind of went more upright and kind of, I don't know, I kind of, it's hard to explain, but my back elbow was up and I just felt more powerful that way. And when you're at your best, you can kind of do anything. Great hitters have hit with a flat bat. Great hitters hit straight up. It's all where you are when that ball's in the hitting zone, and we know that. But isn't it amazing when you're talking about hitting, and you said later in your career you thought you had a flat bat? Isn't it amazing sometimes we go up there into the box and we have something we're doing and we have success and we think in our brain
You got to
how
trick
we
yourself.
right how yeah that isn't it amazing though? Do you think, man, and you go wham, and you just think in your brain how it exactly looked. You get to see it on video and you go, that's not how I thought it
That's
looked.
exactly right. I mean, that's my terminology. I learned to trick myself, and I needed to think something in order for something to go, something mechanically to go right. Now, that doesn't mean that what I'm thinking that I'm doing is actually what I'm doing.
Right.
What I'm thinking I'm doing is working because it's making me do the right thing.
Yeah.
Case in point, 1985, mid-season. I cannot hit Doc Gooden's high fastball, right? Dwight Gooden's high fastball. Can't hit it. Swing through it, foul it off, swing through. You know what I mean? I just can't get on top of
You
his
can't
fastball.
square it. Right. It's like you're swinging at two different balls. I had that with Billy Wagner. I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah. And so I said to myself, I will not let this fastball, this is in a particular at bat, I will not let this fastball get above my bat. If I have to tomahawk the damn thing, right? So in that at bat, he throws a fastball high, and I said, bam! I thought I was trying to drive it right down into home plate, right in front of home plate. I was not going to let my bat get under that fastball. I hit it off of the scoreboard, Shea Stadium, right center.
Yeah.
Watched the video of it, and my bat was perfectly level.
But it felt in your brain, you went over your head and hit it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And ended up being a perfectly level swing through a high fastball. And that's when my last 2 years, that's when I hit that way my last 2 years. And I wish I could get all the Philly hitters to hit that way now, but they can't understand because they've grown up in a different world of hitting. And Brett, pitchers are so big and they throw so hard now, and it's so much tougher now to hit. I don't understand why today's hitters don't give in and figure out a way to do something positively with the high fastball, because catchers just put their glove up here, right? They just
Well,
they just hold their glove high with two
right.
strikes on hitter.
Well, I think it's twofold. I think it's a we were paid on different metrics than the guys are today. For us, it was average, home runs, RBIs. If you were big in those three, that's where you get paid. Today, it's more of an OPS world. It's more about getting on base. They don't care if you strike out. They don't care if your average is high. So I think they have different things that are important that ends up in a big contract. So I think that's why they hit differently and they go about how they train differently. And for guys like you to sit there and watch these guys coming through, hitting 227 with 20 homers and consider, hey, you're really getting it done. You're thinking to yourself, you stink. Anybody that hits 227, you stink. And I think that way. Guys from my generation think that way. You stink. I don't care if it's a generation where the average is down. If you hit 227 in any era, anywhere in this world, you're a terrible hitter. And I don't care. Challenge me. Get anybody in front of me that hit, because I've hit 227 before. I hit 227 for an entire year. And I know I was one of the worst hitters in the world. I felt like I was hitting 127. If you hit 227, I don't care if it's 2024 or 1980, you stink as a hitter. You're a bad hitter. Do you agree with that?
I do. Um, you not enough quality contact, right? I mean, not enough. You don't center the ball on the bat enough, and you don't have it. You don't have the ball on a what would you call it? A productive line. In other words, just too many going up,
Right.
too many going through the zone. You're missing them, fouling them off. When they go up, they're outs unless they're 330-foot fly balls. In today's game, there's a lot of home runs that, that's all you need, 320, 330. But in general, there are way, way, way too many small guys that swing 100% aggressively. There's way, way too many home run swings for guys that have no business swinging for home runs. And we got a lot of them on the Philly team.
Well, because they tell them that's what you're paid for. You're paid to get on base and hit the ball over the wall. Well, as you know, everybody isn't cut out to hit the ball over the wall. There's a lot of great players in the history of baseball that, if that was the criteria, would have never been big league players. So all of a sudden, you've got guys that are, add a huge dynamic to your team that don't hit the ball over the wall, but they're told, I have to hit the ball over the wall. So what do? They try to hit the ball over the wall, and it doesn't work. How I love Larry Boa. How would Larry have been if he played today? And they said, Larry, you got to get on base. He was pretty good at that. And you got to hit the ball over the wall.
I don't know. Larry could play today offensively, and trying to teach him.
You got to hit home runs.
Well, even that word home run.
Right.
You remember a player named Juan Pierre?
Yes. Left-handed hitter. He played for the Phillies for a minute.
He did.
Yeah. Yes.
Juan Pierre.
Base stealer.
Stood at home plate, choked up, and just chopped down at the ball. Walked a lot. Never hit home runs. Just chopped down at the ball. He got on base, at a 400, about 400. There are no players like that nowadays. There are none. And we got a guy that plays center field. Is his name? I'm trying to think. Is it Rojas? I think it's Rojas. Right. Big swing. Big home run swing. I don't understand how they let it happen. But we could talk about the mechanics of hitting till we're blue in the face. You and I know. I did it with your dad a lot, and I believe the key to being a good hitter is when you don't center the ball, right? When you get jammed, when you hit, I would say in a 10 at bats stretch, there are about five, let's call it five at bats where you're not successful, right? In other words, you hit it off the end of the bat, you break your bat. Whenever the ball goes in play, if it's possibly productive, meaning that if you break your bat, the ball can go over second base. I mean, you know what I mean? You can get something out of the swings, out of the at bats where you don't center the ball. You're definitely going to get something out of the ones where you hit the ball hard.
Right.
When you don't hit the ball hard, what are you getting? Right. And that's why I like the ball on the ground better than in the air. In my day, I would rather have a guy hit into more double plays than I would have him strike out more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because the ball that goes on the ground can help you, right?
Well, there's a chance the opponent could make an error. There's a chance. If you strike out, there's no chance. It's over.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you. I agree with you.
I'm in the booth doing a game, and I'm going, we need contact. We need contact in this at bat. We're up there going, God, this guy, you know what I mean? You can't strike out. You can't.
Runner on third, less than 2. Touch the ball.
Exactly.
Sometimes you know what, this guy might be tough on us. He may be a pain in the ass for us in particular, you know, and individually. Okay, those are times where, okay, maybe I'm not going to get a hit. Maybe I'm not even going to hit a sack fly because this guy's so tough on me. But the infield's back. If I hit an 18 hopper to short rollover piece of garbage swing, that still does the job. And sometimes as a hitter,
Yeah,
we need to just, hey, cut our losses right here. I'm going to take the ribby, take the point for my team, and move on.
exactly. It's like in golf. Just take the bogey.
Take the bogey instead of, don't turn it into a triple, which I do all the
Yeah,
time.
well, I do too. I'm learning now. I'm 75 years old, and I'm learning to
You're going to get it right
take
soon.
bogeys.
You're going to get it right sooner
Hey,
or
you know
later.
what, Brett? Real quick. I know we're going too long, probably, but that's the difference in 80 RBIs and 100.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. And believe me, I struck out with a runner on third, less than two, and those are the things that I had trouble sleeping at night. I could handle an 0 for 4. That's going to happen. That's why we get to play defense and maybe take a big hit, turn a big double play late in the game, and I could sleep tonight. But leaving that runner on third, less than two, a lot of great hitters told me, they said, Booney, your average is going to go up and down on a daily basis. But those ribbies, they can't take them away from you. And I often thought about that. I said, you know, sometimes when you're feeling good, runner on third, less than two, and you're in the zone, no, I'm not giving in. I'm probably going to be ahead in the count here. I want to get a base hit. Now it goes to, at worst, I'm going to hit a fly ball. I'm going to get a sac fly 0 for 0 with a ribby. Wow, this guy's really tough. He's bearing that sinker in on my hands. I don't pick it up. I don't see it well. I got to fight off that slider that I'm not seeing going away. I got to get in battle mode here and kind of just touch this ball. If I touch it, this guy scores, I'll be able to sleep better tonight. You know,
That's
help my team with it, you know, and
yeah.
that's the mentality I think you got to have that I don't see across the board in today's game. I'm not
No,
saying everybody, I just don't see that across the board.
no, it's not. And there probably is. I don't know that anybody playing today that has used the term. I'm just going to touch the ball because I can get a runner in. You know, it's by
Sometimes you just got to touch it. You just got to touch it. You got to Terry Harmon it. You got to choke up like Terry Harmon. Tim Foley, get it done. All
yeah.
right, guys that were big, and we are moving along, but this is really interesting stuff to me, and especially it's, you know, I'm selfish because this is my childhood. This is my favorite time of baseball. My career was great. I loved it. I loved playing, getting to go to World Series, All-Star games. That was great. But still, my some of my best are hanging out with you guys when I'm 8 years old with my Philly uniform on. They're just as fulfilling as going to my first All-Star game. I swear, it's weird, but it's true.
You
Uh,
guys were really a pain in the ass around the clubhouse.
Oh, we knew, and we knew it. We didn't care. We didn't care because we were players. We were players in our mind.
They're shagging and BP.
Your relationship with Bull, 3-4 combo early in your career for a long time. I just want to talk to you about a few key guys that were around for those '70s teams, but also were on that '80 World Series team.
Love,
Let's start with Bull.
love him, love him. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. See a lot of him. You know, I see a lot of him in Philly when I go. He still works the Bull's Barbecue on a regular basis. Just he loves the game. He loves to talk about the game. We'll sit, have a drink in our hands, and talk about today's game. And Jean, his wife, and Donna are very good friends. Sue, obviously, your mommy is in that group. We love getting together with them. Um, Larry, same way. Larry's a different Larry now. I'm a
Yeah.
different Mike. Greg's pretty much the same guy. Um, but everybody's different than we were when we played. Different, good, good,
Right.
different. Not that we were bad when we played, but I mean, everybody's
Yeah, but
we're old
but you
men
gr-
now.
Yeah, but you grow up and life humbles you, and you look at things with a different perspective. Boa, you mentioned Larry Bowa. And by the way, for those of you listening, watching the Boom podcast, when we refer to Bull, we're talking about Greg Luzinski. Um, Boa, I'll give you a quick story on Boa. It's 2003. We're coming to town. He's the skipper of the Phillies. And now I still have this relationship with him like little kid.
Yeah.
Boa. That's kind of the last time we interacted when I was 10. Now all of a sudden I'm rolling into town with the Mariners, and we're on a roll, Schmitty. So Larry comes out for BP's leaning on the cage I'm hitting. Hey, Booty, how you doing? Hey, Larry, what's up? And I go over to him and I put my arm around him. I said, listen, here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna beat the crap out of you for 4 games. We're gonna sweep you. I said, and then we're gonna leave and leave you alone, and you can get back to winning some ball games. But when we're here, you got no chance. He got so mad at me, Schmitty. He's yelling at me like for real, yelling at me. I'm playing 100%. He's like for real yelling at me. Got pissed, kind of dropped an expletive, walks off into the dugout. We swept him 4 games, and I remember the late Book. Book was the coach. And I saw him like game 3 or game 4, and he goes, Booney, man, you guys are rolling. And we were at the time. We had won like 12 out of 13 games, and I was just having a good time with Larry. And in the vet, when you're a visitor, well, you were never a visitor, but when you're a visitor, you walk to home plate, you get in the box as a right-hand hitter, and your line of sight is right where that manager stands. And for
That's
4
right.
games, I got to stand and look at Boa. And he was losing every game. And years later, I came to Philly, and Dad threw out a first pitch. I got to catch it, and I got to catch up with Larry. And I told him the story, and he's like, "Oh, Booney, I don't remember that." I said, "Yeah, you were pissed though. You were pissed." But yeah, we all change, and I remember Larry in those clubhouse. He was such a big personality, and I remember he was always the one popping off, and then he hide behind Bull, and Bull was his
Right.
protector. This is just humor me here. This is me reminiscing on my childhood again.
Well,
But there were,
Bull would go boo, and
and
Bull would run.
I could imagine you guys being on the road, being out, and Larry just running his mouth and then just hiding behind Bull and go, "You deal with him."
Yeah, that oh jeez. They say every great team has to have a guy everybody on the team hates.
Yeah, they hate him, but they love him. I used to imitate Larry. He was a third base coach at a different time in my career. And I'd be out at second base. He's coaching third. He's looking at me. I'd wave to him before the game started. And I'd be sitting out there at second base imitating his swing, the Larry Boa swing. He'd
Right.
be like, screw you. And he's yelling at me. He's going, that swing got me 2,000 hits in this big leagues. And I said, Larry, come on. But he was a guy you could get going. And to this day, love Larry Boa, but
Yeah.
he was that guy.
What a character. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But again, he actually, he's still highly regarded by the Phillies. He's got a title, assistant to the GM, or he attends all the meetings. He's integrally involved with the trades and the movement of the roster and things like that. So I think he's right where he likes to be. He's going to go to his grave with a baseball uniform on.
Yeah, he's a lifer and a great player and a great shortstop. Gary Maddox, Bake McBride, Tug, obviously was a character on that team.
Yeah.
Lefty, one of the great Steve Carl, one of the great left-handed pitchers of all time. And then in '79, in the documentary, Pete comes over, and I know he was a big advocate of Mike Schmidt
Yes.
and how great Mike Schmidt was, and almost to the point it's kind of been documented now how Pete thought about it. He's like, when I came over there, I needed to let Mike know how he was revered in the visiting clubhouse and how great of a player, what he needed to be. Speak to that relationship with Pete a little bit and what he brought to the Phillies in '79. You didn't
Yeah.
win that year, but you won it in '80.
Well, it's hard to understand how one player can make such a difference in baseball, right? Because there's 9 guys on the field and 25 guys on the roster, and maybe basketball you get like a Kareem Jabbar or something like that, and he totally changes the complexion of the team. He changes every game because he's in the middle, and he can change everything. Football, you get a great quarterback. I mean, he can make a difference in the record of a team. But in baseball, how does one player coming to a team change changed the team. And in Pete's case, we had a bunch of guys, and we failed that 3 straight times in the mid '70s in the postseason, and we all, in fact, one of the times Pete and the Reds beat us, and Pete, he's a kind of guy. He's a gamesmanship is unbelievable. With Pete, he'll go talk to the opponent pregame during the batting cage. He used to like to kneel on one, on one leg was his bat, cross his legs, and yell stuff at the other players, laughing, kidding them, and such. And he stands out there, and he likes to play pepper with the bat boys, and so he's always out on the field. And he knows what's going on, and he got close to Bull and Larry in the early '70s, and I think that's one of the reasons he came to Philly, because of his relationship with Lazinski and Larry, and he changed our team because we all were just like our chests we just felt each of us individually, because Pete Rose was in our locker room, and just look what Pete Rose has done in his life as a player, and we all fed off of Pete. If you could imagine, and Pete wasn't swinging the bat for us or catching the balls for us or anything like that, but it was just that Pete would he just said things. It was the relationships that we all had with him that were important to us, and in my case, being there was something that I needed. I really couldn't put my finger on it what I needed, but Pete flat out told the media when he got there that I was the best player he's ever played with. Now you're talking about a guy that played with Perez and Bench and Morgan and some great players. And boy, did that make me go to the next level in terms of confidence. And I think that's what turned me on in the '80s, turned our team on. '80, '81, we were probably a better team than we were in '80. And '83, we're a great team with Morgan and Perez and all those guys joining Pete on our team. So the run that Pete had from '79 to '83 was unbelievably special in Philadelphia. And I think the city, it's unfortunate the way it all ended up with Pete, but Pete is going to be is very important to the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I know he passed away recently, and
Yeah.
I had him on the show about 10, 12 months ago.
Did you?
Yeah, and he was a somber Pete. Because Pete, I never saw Pete not loud, biggest guy in the room, and he had a little bit different. He was still Pete for the most part, but when he was talking about his legacy and he was a little bit somber for the first time when I talked to him, and it was a different side of him than I've ever seen. It was a very humble side, and not saying that he hasn't been humbled. We talk about life after baseball and going through. Life will humble you, believe me. I know. I'm sure you've gone through stuff in your life that's very humbling. He was a different Pete, and I don't know. I wish things would have ended up different too, because to this day he's one of my favorite players I've ever watched. As far as coming to the ballpark, suiting up, and how you play the game, the Pete Rose is kind of the epitome of that. If he got 4 hits, it wasn't enough. He needed to get 5.
Pete will always be referred to. He'll always be referenced by players of whatever the current generation is. He'll never be forgotten. They'll always say, "Hey, he reminds me of Pete Rose," right?
Right.
I used to say, I've heard Harper say it before. And Harper uses Pete a lot of times when he talks, and Harper plays the game like Pete. And I don't know how to describe it, but he hustles all the time like Pete. And he has a dive into bases, and he has Pete was maybe the closest thing to being an emotional player, which is pretty normal in today's game. There's so much emotion in today's game. It's almost off the charts. In total, it almost takes the respect for the opposition just totally away. In today's players, the way they scream and yell at, each other and striking a guy out and the pitcher goes crazy, or hitting a home run and, flip with a bat or running around. There's just so much stuff that would have caused back when we played or when you played that would have caused riots on the baseball field.
Right.
Uh, nowadays, but Pete will always he'll hold a place in the game forever because of the way he played it. And I see Pete Rose on the field all the time now.
A few more things, and I'll let you out of here. I wasn't aware of this till I watched the documentary, and we've watched recent playoffs. This was well documented. This year's World Series with Aaron Judge, for my 2 cents, is the best offensive player in the game today. That's
Yeah,
Aaron Judge.
no
He had a
question.
rough postseason, and I started going through just baseball and my generation of the guys that had tough times. Clayton Kershaw, one of the greatest lefties of all time, has had a rough, rocky road in the postseason. But from my generation, it was Barry Bonds. Until 2002, Barry Bonds was the best hitter I've ever played with, played against, seen, whatever we want to talk about. But he had a lot of not many postseason accolades, and it was starting to hear about it. Then all of a sudden, in 2002, his series against the Angels, he went something ridiculous, and you couldn't get him out. But
Right.
until then, here's the greatest hitter in the game and having a tough time in the postseason. I was thinking that last year when Aaron Judge was having a tough time, it starts to weigh on you. I didn't know because I was a kid, and I just remember 1980. You're the MVP. You're the MVP of the World Series, and I didn't think Schmidt was one of those guys that had some postseason struggles. But the documentary that came out talk to that a little bit. And when you see an Aaron Judge of 2024 struggling, you can relate wholeheartedly with.
I did not, Brett. I did not do much in any of the early NLCSs against the Reds and two times against the Dodgers. Um, Mediocre. I mean, I don't even know if I hit a home run in the postseason up until 1980. Um, so it wasn't much. I mean, I always left a bad taste in my mouth. Those early postseason at bats and games when we end up losing. Um, in the 1980 NLCS, and which is postseason, didn't do anything either. Maybe one ground ball hit, one RBI, struck out with a tying run in that last game with the against Ken Forsch. Del Unser knocked him in right behind me, but I remember that. I remember the biggest hit of my career being Del Unser's hit after I left the tying run on third base. But I did play a big role in getting the team. We had to win 2 out of 3 in Montreal before we got to Houston in 1980, and I won each of the first 2 games with home runs. But and then in the World Series, it all changed, Brett. I finally had a consistent World Series. Got a hit in every game, a lot of RBIs, won the MVP. So I finally came through in the clutch for the team in the World Series. And then 83, you're alluding to that. I had a great NLCS, and I went like 1 for 20, 1 for 22 in the World Series. So I can relate to all of it. I can relate to being the MVP. I can relate to being the GOAT, not the GOAT, greatest of all time GOAT, but I'm
Right, like goat in a bad way. Yeah.
right.
Well, people don't understand, in today's game, being on this side of the ledger now. They're getting on Aaron Judge. I said, you don't get it. When you're the guy, when you're the man, first of all, they pitch to you different. There's a little different situation where they're not there. We have meetings before every series. And who are we not going to let beat us? And we usually pick one guy. And usually the best player of the team is that guy. He's going to be pitched to a little different, a little tougher in certain situations. So I don't put much credence in it. I think about the lead up to getting there. The reason that you're there is because of Mike Schmidt and what he did winning the MVP during the regular season over 162. You did have the big one in 1980, but some of the all-time greats have had some postseason humbling times that they've gone through, and that's just a part of this game. And it's a testament to how hard it is. And it's not a matter of, oh, he's choking. It's not a choking. Yeah, all of us as players feel, man, all right, I had a great season. Now we're getting to the postseason. I really got to bring. And sometimes you put too much pressure. Like, no, just this is just extend the regular season to the postseason. But when it starts to build up, and now you feel like, wow, I'm not coming through, and now you're your own worst enemy.
Well, offensively, players, should I say, Aaron Judge kind of players, Mike Schmidt kind of players, we're vulnerable. We're
Sure.
vulnerable being pitched to. We don't have a touch it mentality like you were talking about earlier. Just
Right.
touch. Um, we are more, I wouldn't say aggressive, but if we get behind the eight ball a little bit, if we 0 for 5, 0 for 6, a couple of strikeouts in key situations, or we start pressing a little bit. We're human. You know what I mean? We start pressing a little bit, and we want to go out of the strike zone, and taking the walk starts to leave our game when we want to make up for that 0-5, 0 for 5, 0
Mhm.
for 6, 0 for 7. Before you know it, it becomes an 0 for 10. And then you break a bat and get a hit, and it's a 1 for 12, and then you strike out. You know how it
Sure.
multiplies,
Sure.
right? You've been there, and it's not it's not going to happen as much to the little left-handed guy who makes, I won't say makes a lot of contact, but I mean, um, as you say, you get pitched a little differently. They're not going to let me beat them or Aaron Judge beat them, and they go to the bullpen, earlier. If Judge is coming up with the bases loaded, and rather than let him face that left-handed starter, no, he gets to face a 98-mile-an-hour guy out of the bullpen. Um, Other guys, they'd let the left-handed, starter stay in to pitch to him, and it's just, it's a different world. And when you get on the plus side of that world, you win games. You do so much damage that the team wins games because you're there in the middle of the lineup. You've been there before. You're there in the middle of the lineup, and your presence affects the game. Your presence affects the way the manager changes his pitchers. Your presence uh, puts the defense in a certain mode on the defense because you're in there. And I remember so many times when I played in my career that I played when I shouldn't have played. I might have had a little pulled hammy or something like that, or I might have jammed my wrist, or you know what I'm saying? There might have been something wrong, and I shouldn't have been in the lineup. But I went in the lineup because my presence,
Makes a difference.
my presence affected the game, even with a wrap on my wrist, they still pitched. They still pitched to the guy in front of me, like I was, because I'm standing in the on deck circle, right?
Right.
He got the 3-2 fastball instead of the 3-2 changeup, and it's a world of behind the scenes world in baseball that not unless you're a baseball guy, fans, writers, whoever, they're not tuned into that as much.
Yeah, it's a mentality though that we always had was I'm one of the main guys that this team relies on. I've got to be there rain or shine. And some days I probably shouldn't be playing, but I need to be there because it's expected. And that was our mentality. And when you talk about sometimes being in a lineup, your mere presence and 70 or 60% of Mike Schmidt might be a difference maker in a game than 100% of X player. I get completely what you're talking about.
I'm gonna come up
Um,
here and maybe I get a walk and I score on a double.
right,
I got the walk because I laid off a 3-2 slider.
right. Um, Final question: what makes Philly different than everywhere else?
um, this is a 75-year-old talking. I'm gonna temper my thoughts, Brett.
Temper. All
glad,
right.
I'm glad you did.
I'll tell you what. When we're done with this, if you call me and say, "Booney, can you take that out?" I'll take it out.
No, I mean um, it's a passionate town. Is, passion as a fan is a very important word, right?
Right.
Um, it's it's um, it's passion that sometimes causes a reaction that isn't pleasant in Philadelphia. Passion gets you to the game, rain or shine. You know what I mean? It gets you to the game. Passion in Philly means you're going to wear a jersey, right? You're going to go to the game and wear a jersey and take a handkerchief. And you're going to listen to talk shows because you're passionate. You're going to maybe even call in to talk shows. Um, you're going to have your favorite player. You're going to have a player maybe that maybe you'd rather not see him come up in a certain situation. If you're passionate, you might say, "Man, why didn't he cut his hair?" He's such a good. You know what I mean? You're just part of the family when you're a passionate fan. You feel like you're in the family. You feel like you can be a part of the game. And I think Philadelphia fans now understand how important they are to the team because of the Trey Turner issue. That really took them to another level. So, I think it's a good word for Philadelphia sports fans is that tremendously passionate. They care. They care. And I believe they boo because they care.
Yeah, and they kind of have a reputation of doing that. I've never played there as the home team. I love going there as an opponent just because of what you said, the passion. But growing up there, and now to this day, just friends of mine, childhood friends that grew up in Jersey. It's like, and you can't just be a Philly fan. You're a Philly fan, you're an Eagle fan, you're a Sixer fan, you're a Flyers fan. You've got a jersey for everyone. I've never seen another city. In certain cities, you're a Yankee fan, but that doesn't mean you're a Jets or a Giants fan. That means you're a Yankee fan and you hate the Mets.
Yeah.
I've never seen a city all in on all the sports. And it's like it's part of the culture. Like if you're born and raised there, no, you have to love the Phillies, you have to love the Eagles, you have to love the Flyers, you have to love the Sixers. And if you don't, something's wrong with you. I've never seen another city where it's across the board support for all the sports
Right.
franchises. Yeah.
And you know what? It's a great time to be that passionate Phillies fans now because look at the Eagles. We should have gone farther than we did, but with a fantastic year. Yeah, it's sure up and down here and there, but I think everybody thought the Phillies should have gone all should have been in the World Series.
Yeah, it's a great team.
And the Sixers, I'm not sure how they're doing, but they got great players, great to watch, and the Flyers always. But yeah, it's a great time to be a Philadelphia sports fan.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you this. I was watching it, and the part of the documentary that made me laugh. Dave Collins, who's a friend of a lot of the guys. Dave Collins.
Doug Collins.
I'm sorry, Doug Collins.
Yeah.
So he was doing part of the narrating with Barkley and Kruk had a few lines in there, but he says, "Hey," he goes, "in early '70s." Schmidt says, "Hey, could you pull my car around?" And Doug says, "Hey, Schmidt, I'm an all-star too." I thought that was one of my favorite parts of the documentary.
I love Doug Collins, man. He and I have grown together the last 4 or 5 years, unbelievably so. I went to the NBA Hall of Fame induction. He got into NBA Hall of Fame this year.
Yeah.
And that was quite an experience to watch the NBA Hall of Fame induction.
It was great though. He says, Schmidt, I'm an all-star too. And then they asked him, well, what'd you do? He goes, well, I pulled his car around. So he ended up doing it. I thought it was awesome. All right. Well, Mike, I appreciate this, man. This is a lot of fun. It's always great to see you and get to catch up a little bit. Really, really cool. And like I said, you got the documentary now. Not everybody gets a statue and not everybody gets a documentary, but you got both of them. Well deserved. Tell Donna hi, even though I only knew her as a little kid, but as soon as she was on talking about you, I said, there's Donna Schmidt. I remember Donna Schmidt. And then they would flash back to when when you were playing.
Right.
And that's the Donna I remember sitting with my mom and give her my best. And I just appreciate you doing this. It's a lot of fun catching up. For those of you watching the Bret Boone podcast now on YouTube, be sure to check it out. For those of you listening on the Odyssey app or wherever you download your apps. Until next time, keep it here. Thanks, Michael.